The notion that mainframes are unhackable is a myth.
Controls that prevent the bad guys from doing things they shouldn't be doing on the system are only as good as last time you checked them. And the bad guys only have to get it right once.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Mainframe Insights. My name is Emre Tunar, and today I'm really excited that we have an all-star cast of mainframe security experts, starting with Jose Arias, Rickensrud, and Michael Jordan. We're going to be talking about ethical mainframe hacking or penetration testing. And here we are in beautiful Prague with a number of landmarks and historical sites. And I want to ask Chad, what's your favorite landmark here in Prague?
Well, I haven't been here that long, but I mean, the one that comes to mind, the obvious answer is the castle, of course, the beautiful castle on the hill.
Yeah, Prague Castle, overlooking the city, and a great background for any photo op you want to do in the city. And thinking about castles in general, when we talk about mainframe security today, we talk about strategy of defense in depth. And castles are actually, I think, prime examples of defense in depth and how humans have implemented defense in depth with features like a moat around as the first level of defense, and you got additional layers like an outer wall and an inner wall and a drawbridge and a gate and even archers to keep the enemy away, right? Protecting the crown jewels. I think we could draw a lot of analogy to mainframe cybersecurity and how we need to layer up in levels of security to give that protection. And mainframes inherently have, from the very early days, have been built with security in mind, with core security capabilities in the platform, in the operating systems, and newer capabilities that have been added more recently, like pervasive encryption and quantum safe encryption, and surrounding ecosystem software that provides additional capabilities like multi-factor authentication, privileged access management, and continuous monitoring, and et cetera. But one of the most overlooked aspects and elements, I think, is penetration testing. So Chad, I want to turn to you and kind of ask you to level set us on what is penetration testing and ethical hacking.
All of the things you just discussed, right, are the controls, what we say in the industry, the controls that prevent you from prevent the bad guys from doing things they shouldn't be doing on the system, whether it's a firewall or user IDs, authentication, authorization, logging and monitoring, all of these different layers of protection. But as anybody in any other discipline will tell you, they're only as good as your last time you checked them, right? And to check them is not so much like an audit. Yes, we want to do that. We want to make sure that it's running, that it's working, but we actually want to test them. And this is where penetration testing comes in. So in penetration testing, we act like the adversary. We say the adversary or the bad guy who's trying to take advantage of your system. So what does that mean? Well, maybe they, if you think about what happens in cybercrime today, most of the crime is just theft, right? Most of the time what they're after is your intellectual property, your client's data, money, straight up money. It's not particularly complicated in terms of what their motivations are, but a lot of times how they get in and how they affect these things can run the gamut, a range of something as easy as they found your password in a breach from a different site and were able to use that password because you used the same passwords over and over again, or you left a default password when you installed some product, to very complex chains of, whether it's supply chains or binary exploits or whatever, things they have to string together. Everybody who uses a mainframe is probably a target of some kind, right? Because you're not using this platform unless you have something really important that you're doing with it. And so if you lay it out in really simple terms, like, look, you've got all these controls, you spent all this time and all this money building this up, but without testing it, in a previous life of mine, I ran a storage organization, and we often would say, our backups are only as good as the last time we tried to restore them, and everybody who works in that group would tell you, like, of course you do that. It's the same thing with penetration testing. So we come in and when we're penetration testing, and we act like the adversary. A lot of times if we're penetration testing a system, we don't, the organization, except for maybe someone at the top of the organization knows about it, a lot of times the rest of the people don't know we're doing it, because we want to test not only the technical controls, but the people controls too. If we're in the system and we're looking around and we're trying to break into this or trying to access this and that sets off an alarm, we want to know, does the person respond to that sort of thing? So what we really do is just with permission, but with the same set of skills, we go in and try to emulate what the adversaries would do, and then at the end of it, come up with a, usually a report, but moreover a conversation of here's all the things we were able to do, here's the types of controls then that you could use to protect that, to make sure it doesn't happen again or alert yourself for that sort of thing. And then rinse and repeat, right? It's not a one-time thing. It's a thing that is probably going to be difficult for an organization the first time they do it, because there'll be a lot of things on that report, but then it gets easier and easier. But I think, if you're going to go through the trouble of trying to protect all these things, it just seems to me like you probably should go through the trouble of testing it. And so it's really that simple, what we do.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad. So I want to go to Michael next, and I spoke about some of the capabilities that are available on the platform, as well as the surrounding ecosystem of software capabilities that make the platform one of the most securable, if not the most securable platforms on the planet. But and again, penetration testing is often overlooked. Why do we need to penetration test the mainframe?
Sure, so that's an excellent question, and I'm going to build on what Chad was talking about. The first point that I want to make is that mainframes are servers like any other server. The notion that they're unhackable is a myth, right? Mainframes provide services like any other platform, and while the techniques that you might use to attack a mainframe may be slightly different, all the same attack vectors and threats that exist on other platforms also exist on the mainframe. And to your point about the castles, right?
Yeah.
Most organizations are using mainframes for their crown jewels, right? It's their mission critical applications, and while the risk of something bad might happen is relatively low for the mainframe, the impact of something bad happening is extremely high. So when you combine those two together, there's considerable risk. And so as a result of that, we want to make sure that we are doing everything possible to protect against it. The second point I want to make is if we look over time, the role of the mainframe is evolved. The time where mainframe is tucked away in a corner and not really connected to anything is long gone, and mainframes are interconnected and integrated across the broader enterprise and even across cloud. We've got APIs that are integrated with mobile applications. We've got APIs that are integrated with cloud applications. And the mainframe is a huge data serving platform, serving data to all different types of AI activities and AI platforms. And as a result of that, it's hugely interconnected, and that begs for making sure that everything is being secured properly. And then the last point that I want to make is when you look at the anatomy of attacks that occur, lateral movement is a huge part of any attack. And if somebody is able to compromise an adjacent system to a mainframe and they're camped out there, you can bet for sure that they're going to take every possible approach to poke a hole and find a weakness in that mainframe. And so as a result of that, all of these factors, penetration testing is absolutely essential to making sure that you're not being passive in your approach to securing your mainframe, but you're active in securing the mainframe, and it is properly configured, and there are no known weaknesses or vulnerability.
Yeah.
It is a server, is a big, important, complex server in your enterprise, but it is just a server.
Right.
The notion of what is penetration testing might be new to people in the mainframe community, but it certainly isn't new to anyone else in the IT and or information security world, right? Your networks, your servers, your web servers, all of those systems are getting penetration tested at any organization of scale. So the good news is you have already the processes and procedures and best practices out there for patching and vulnerability management. You just have to maybe tweak it a little bit to be mainframe centric and then do it. Don't treat it like an island. Don't treat it special. Give it all the same, treatment that you would give all the rest of your systems. And love. Exactly. Exactly right.
Yeah. So Michael, you spoke about the kind of the changing landscape of mainframe becoming more connected. The other piece of changing evolution has been the threat actors and threat vectors that have been evolving and becoming more sophisticated and more complex over the last decade. And that has triggered, when you look at around the world, a number of governments into motion enacting new regulations. So I want to turn to Jose next and ask about where do you see penetration testing roles in those upcoming regulations like the US executive order or DORA?
DORA was made to increase the resilience of the financial institutions across Europe. So that means banks, insurance companies, and all the companies around that topic, but also the third-party service provider, which is something new. Normally, regulations don't include also these third providers. And DORA has 5 pillars, and one of them is exclusively talking about operational resilience testing. And DORA mandates 2 kinds of different tests. In one hand, it's talking about operational resilience testing, which is mandatory at least once a year, and it can be done by internal stakeholders, and is mandatory for all the financial institutions regulated by DORA and also the third-party providers. And in the other hand, there is a much deeper penetration testing called threat-led penetration testing, which is around, it can last for 6 months to 1 year. It's mandatory to do it every 3 years, and it's like simulating a real attack, but not only to our systems like the mainframe, but also is using social engineering to try to damage using your workers' power to get to your systems, and also hardware, software. And it's a really complex exercise made in production systems, so it has also some risk around. This has to be coordinated also with national authorities of each country. At the moment, 16 countries in Europe has adopted this, and you need to have also a purple thing, which is a combination of the red and the blue. Mm-hmm. So you have a report that you share with the authorities, and they need to approve it. And the good news is that you can use also internal testers every 3 times. So the 4th time you will need to use an external provider to do so. And this is why the course that we are doing about mainframe ethical hacking is key in this, because as you can use your internal people, you need to teach that. And Chad is doing a great work about this. Can you please talk about how the mainframe ethical hacker course?
Sure. So when I worked for a bank, we started talking about these things like penetration testing, who's doing vulnerability management on the mainframe, how are we doing patching and updates and all this stuff, how are we testing out new features, and we realized that there just wasn't a large body of knowledge out there from what we call, like the offensive side of security. So offensive meaning literally to be on offense, right? The attackers, but the ethical, the people who come to do the penetration testing. And so we couldn't find people. So we had to sort of train ourselves up on how to do this ourselves, and then realized that there was also a gap in just that. Like if we didn't know how to do it, odds are other companies didn't know how to do it. So maybe we should come up with some ideas on how to train them. And so we offer now at Broadcom for our clients an ethical mainframe hacking course where you can come in with literally the very basic amount of skills on ZOS, and we'll teach you over the course of 2 or 3 days what it looks like. And the goals of the course are really a couple things. One, some easy wins to show you just how a mainframe that could be otherwise very well secured, but maybe they just miss a few things, right? We have a saying, right, that the good guys have to get it right every time, and the bad guys only have to get it right once, right? So you have to be perfect in everything you do all the time, and you miss that one thing, you install that product, you miss that one configuration, whatever, they'll find their way in. So we show you how that works, but also the biggest shift especially for mainframers who've been in the mainframe world for a while is thinking like an attacker, right? How can I look at this system and instead of thinking about how can I make it more resilient, how can I make it faster, more efficient, cost less, whatever it is, how can I take advantage of, how can I look at it and see, well, geez, we use only this kind of password here, or we don't use multi-factor authentication, or we installed this product, but we're not using TLS or encryption, and what could happen then, and what could, to get people thinking like that, because that starts the next conversation, right? So when you did this class, we mixed that up with technical exercises where you get to be hands-on and actually be the hacker, but a lot of it is also just starting to change the way you think about the system and look at it from not how can I secure this, but how could I take advantage of this insecurity potentially and use that information to secure it, which is a different mindset from an engineering mindset to more of a taking advantage of misconfigurations and misses and that kind of stuff. So it's been very popular with the people who've come in and taken it so far. We've got good feedback, and if you get a chance, you should take that class. It's I think you'll enjoy it.
Great, and that's a great place to start, right? If you're needing to upskill your staff, that's a great resource available. Any other resources, Chad, that's available?
One great resource that we just started doing here at Broadcom recently is a capture the flag contest. So that probably might not mean anything if you haven't been outside sort of the mainframe security world, but in the rest of the security world, it's a fairly common exercise. And what it is basically we set up a mainframe in its own little bubble, lock it down, and then we open up certain vulnerabilities on the system. And we basically set it up as a game, right? So you can sign up and play. And we're going to run this during various conferences. We're running one here at MTE in Prague. We ran one at Share. We'll continue to do this. And basically, I lead you through a series of challenges, finding so-called flags. And you have to use your knowledge of the system and your ability to kind of think like a hacker in order to find some sort of vulnerabilities. And they're all based on things that I have found or we have found in real life, right? Where someone leaves something insecure or someone didn't secure something correctly, et cetera, all the way to programs that were written using encryption algorithms, but they maybe didn't do it quite right? So it's your opportunity because you might not be able to just play around probably on your system in your enterprise to come and actually try to hack this system for points and glory and recognition amongst you and your friends or whatever.
And it's a fun way to start.
It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time and insights today. And thanks to our audience for joining us today for another episode of Mainframe Insights. We talked about a number of resources available to you. If you would like to take advantage of our instructor-led training courses, you could scan the QR code that's on the screen. And if you would like to have a conversation about your cybersecurity posture on the mainframe, we're happy to have a conversation with you. Please reach out on LinkedIn. And if you want to take advantage of Capture the Flag Challenge, hope to see you at one of the upcoming conferences.